you, my pathetic, broke, mortal Lord of Geo. I imagine that's exactly how Phanes greeted Morax, and then casually tossed erosion at him, which the old man is still suffering from to this day. Yes, today we're talking about Morax, but overall we'll be discussing the Lantern Rite storyline, and taking a look at what Chinese Santa Claus actually brought us great lore, or a messed up festival, according to the fandom. It's also interesting how the fandom absolutely hated this year's Lantern Rite because Xiao didn't get enough screen time. But today, we'll be looking at an interesting turn involving Zibai. Because before the Lantern Rite story, there were leaks saying she was Istaroth's daughter. But what we were shown turned out to be a bit more than that, which obviously can't help but be pleasing. I didn't rush through the quest, but that gave me time to fully study all the information. And we'll end up touching on a lot of things. Alright. I won't keep you any longer. As always, this is Lily. Don't forget to subscribe. That's the best way to thank me for my content. And don't forget to leave a like. And you know what the Heavenly Principles definitely won't tell you? That LD shop exists, and it has some of the best top-up deals for Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and many other games. On LD shop, you don't need to share your account or passwords, just enter your server and UID, that's it. The top-up is official, safe, and super fast. In most cases, the currency appears in your account in about 5 minutes. LD Shop is backed by the LD brand, the same company behind LD Player and LD Cloud, so this isn't some random third-party site. They also have great customer support and an active community on Discord and Facebook if anything goes wrong. Also, if you spend $80 in a single month, you can get free Welkin Moon. And here's the best part. New users get 15% off, and you can get an extra 5% discount using my coupon. So if you're planning to top up in Genshin, check out LD Shop. Link is in the description. Okay, I'll say right away that I don't want to retell the plot in full detail like main quests do. So we'll go strictly over the basics. The Traveler and Paimon arrive at the festival, where they meet Lu Wen, an old man who runs the White Stallion Inn. And he tells stories about the White Horse Adeptus. By the way, the Lu family traces its lineage all the way back to the era of Morax and Guizhong in the Gili Plains. This is shown in the Zibai teaser, where a girl from the Lu family encounters a white horse. After that, we meet various friends from the Geo region, specifically Keqing and Ningguang, who are investigating a case where someone is devouring the moon and figuring out what's going on. Later, at an exhibition of various ancient and impressive artifacts, we meet Zhongli, and when he touches one of the items, time stops and we find ourselves in some kind of dimension where we meet Zibai. Morax then tells us that this is one part of Zibai's soul, and that he wants to gather all the parts in order to summon her into the world of humans, meaning Teyvat, but time is running out because after what happened in Nodcry, when we pulled the real moon into Teyvat, the fake moon began to disappear, and that fake moon is exactly where Istaroth hid the soul of the horse, and the moon will vanish right after the festival. What I want to focus on here is Zhongli saying something like, he has always been cautious about revealing the secrets of Teyvat to us, because the more you know, the harder it is to get rid of the burden of knowledge, and I'm just like, bruh, we already know enough. And now you're saying this kind of nonsense, people complain about gameplay cockblocks, but this is an obvious lore cockblock. Like, screw you, you're not allowed to learn anything, because imagine the responsibility you'd have to bear if you knew everything. Come on, is this a joke? They shouldn't have written this excuse at all. The Lord of Geo also says that maybe it's wrong for you to be moving around Teyvat like this, basically asking why you even need all of this. To which the Traveler replies that everything is fine, and that's when Morax tells the truth about Zibai. Though to me, it feels more like Morax isn't staying silent because he's worried about us, but because he himself is scared that someone might come for him, so he keeps his mouth shut. Anyway, we learn that Zibai's soul is sealed and divided into 3 entities. The first is Ziju, the second is Ziji, and the third is Ziqiao. And if we break down what these names mean, the following picture emerges. The name Zibai translates as purple and white, with meanings like purple dissolving into white, or one who stands between the heavens and the void. Ziju translates as one who dwells in the heavens or one who lives in the higher realms. ZZ translates as one who has attained understanding or the knower of truth, and Ziqiao translates as exalted sage, or one who stands above the ordinary, meaning there's nothing particularly remarkable in these names, given her Celestian origin, just so you know, and the translations themselves are not precise, because the names are simply elegant combinations of characters and their meanings are only approximate, and you'd really need native Chinese speakers to say for sure. So, we found the first entity in a relic, The second entity is inside a girl from the Liu family, but then it passes through several people and we decide to capture it. And once we catch it, we are transported to Zibai's prison so that she can fulfill our wish to pass through. One interesting detail is that in order to save Zibai, Istaroth herself descended into Teyvat. And the horse also spoke about the River of Time, which are essentially the tears Istaroth shed over those who died, is our time lady. Really that sentimental. Although considering how much she did to ensure humanity survived, it honestly makes sense. Although in the teaser about the shades, she felt completely different to me. But we'll live and see. After that, Zibai releases the curse, and we successfully escape from it, which surprises the Adeptus, who says that it seems time truly cannot hold you, and that we will be able to bear the burden of truth. And honestly, I don't really understand what bearing the burden of truth even means. Zhongli said the exact same thing before. Like, what is my heart supposed to stop from learning the truth? Or, for people of Teyvat, is it some kind of script where if you learn the truth, you either die or go insane? But it doesn't work on us as a descender, which is why Zibai says that we can endure the burden of truth. And if that's the case, then why the hell isn't Morax telling us anything at all? But alright, moving on. We then see what happened to the ancient civilization of the Geo region, namely Lan Gan, which was located in and around the modern-day chasm. People pray to 3 moons, sing poems to them, and offer gifts, and it's said that an adeptal horse lives on the moon and sometimes descends to Teyvat to help. If we refer to the book before Sun and Moon, then roughly the events shown here take place in the festive year, about 400-500 years after Phanes' victory over the dragons and 1 year before the return of Nibelung, the Year of Mourning. By that time, humans had already learned how to cultivate the land and had gathered their first harvest. They began mining resources and extracted precious ore. For the first time, people came together and the first poems were written, which is exactly what the book says and what the scene shows. All of this was taught to them by angels, and in Lan Gan's case, that angel was Zibai. But Zibai wasn't just any angel. She received a promotion and became closer to Istaroth, possibly as her assistant or simply as a high-ranking angel. What's interesting is that other civilizations likely had their own high-ranking angels as well, but what's certain is that there was a hierarchy and some kind of internal structure, like angels responsible for helping humanity, or angels assigned to other tasks, something like that. In short, after the girl says that we'll wait for the next year and see Zibai again, the moons collapse, which means drunk dad Nibelung showed up and spread the abyss across Teyvat. As written in the book, the second throne arose in the heavens, and war broke out once more, as it had at the creation of the world. On that day, the heavens collapsed and the earth was rent asunder. Our ancestors and their land were swallowed by the sea. Thus began the era of darkness. We also know that in order to stop the spread of abyssal corruption, Phanes dropped celestial nails all across the world on Lan Gan, on Hyperborea, on the city of Iz, on Arcadia, on Atlantis, on the kingdom of night. On top of that, Teyvat was already completely screwed. What was happening in Hyperborea, only Khaenrians would truly understand. While in Lan Gan, there was pure chaos and everyone was waiting for the white horse to come and save them, but instead of a horse in the sky, they saw a celestial nail. Well, unlucky. After that, we see a dialogue between Zibai and Istaroth, where Istaroth confirms that the nails are necessary to cleanse the abyss. And as for all the humans dying, well, that's just how it is. Istaroth tells her not to take responsibility for their deaths, since it was Phanes' decision. To which the horse replies that she can't just sit around in Celestia doing nothing, but Istaroth doesn't stop her, and instead accepts her decision, saying that in that case, she will die as well. As we see, Zibai tries to stop the nail, but apparently gets instantly banned from the Teyvat server and dies, but Istaroth saves her by splitting her into parts. Was it necessary to do that? I mean, to save people? Probably not, because who the hell are you to try to stop a nail and go against Phanes? At that moment, Nibelung, First Angel, and Voyager were already gone, and you decided to play the hero, failed to stop the nail, and would have died if not for Istaroth. A stupid decision in my opinion. But on the other hand, I think this exact decision is what pushed Istaroth to save the horse. But that's just speculation. Either way, Zibai bought time, and many people managed to survive and relocate to the Chenyu Vale. So thanks for that. From the following dialogue with a fragment of Zibai, we learn that she harbors hatred toward Phanes for what he did, which is logical, but she likely won't act on it herself, since it seems the angel's base programming is still in place and she simply can't go against him, which she directly states, saying that if it were up to her, she would. But it isn't. It's also funny that Zibai asks the Traveler to let her know if anyone ever goes against Phanes, and she'll immediately fly in to sort things out. The next soul fragment we find based on Morax's guidance, since he tells us exactly where to go, and there we meet a rather amusingly bickering pair, the Lord of Geo and the White Horse. Morax tells her that Teyvat has already changed, that everything is different now, and that she can see it for herself, and that he'll provide her with guides, at which point we step in, and yes, we become guides for Ziqiao. We take her to various places, introducing her to cultural developments and the reverence for the past. The only thing I didn't understand is why Ganyu didn't react much to Zibai at all, considering that they should have crossed paths during the Archon War, when both fought under the Lord of Geo. But oh well, maybe they were involved in different events. The war lasted a long time after all, and they could have fought for Morax at different times. In the end, the third fragment of Zibai is entrusted to us. The Lantern Rite comes to an end, and Zibai is reborn. Yes, here she calls Morax a heavenly star, but I promise we'll talk about that a bit later. After that, Zibai and I travel around Liyue, and nothing particularly out of the ordinary happens, and everything ends the same way it began with Old Man Lu. Well, now let's probably move on to breaking down specific points, because there are quite a lot of them. I want to start with something simple that I don't have an answer to. As we know, Lan Gan was located in the area of the modern-day chasm, and for now it's the only first civilization we know of in Liyue. But then how are the developers supposed to explain the fact that there are ruins of ancient civilizations on Mount Aokang? I can still understand the ruins in Mingyun Village, since those can be explained by their proximity to Dragonspine and likely connections to Salvindadnir, but Wuvang Hill, just look at how far it is from Dragonspine and even farther from the chasm. Purely from a technical and logical standpoint, it's impossible to assume those ruins are connected to Lan Gan. They're way too far apart. I honestly don't know whether there was another civilization between Lan Gan and Mondstadt that the developers just don't want to talk about yet, or if they simply used the wrong ruin assets back at release, which ended up creating confusion like I said. I don't have an answer to this. Maybe you do. Next, let's talk about Morax. In the Vermilion Hereafter artifact set, it stated that Morax appeared in Teyvat around 6,000 years ago. But based on Zibai's story, it turns out that Morax was already present in Teyvat during the first descent of the White Horse and already possessed god-level power, which is interesting. Morax also warned Zibai that Phanes is kind of a bastard, so she should watch herself. And overall, it gives the impression that the Geo Grandpa has been around for much longer than we originally thought. And of course, I promise to return to Morax's name, or rather, what Zibai calls him, the Heavenly Star. As we know, Chinese is fundamentally different from many other languages when it comes to translation, because a pair of characters can have multiple meanings. And in the case of Heavenly Star, Tensing does translate literally as Heavenly Star. But the combined meaning of the characters can imply something else. Unfortunately, I can say for sure here, but the same characters are also used in the name of his elemental burst, Falling Comet. And if you put 2 and 2 together, it starts to look like Morax is an outlander, someone who arrived from outside, but not a descender, similar to Skirk. If we look at Skirk, she's more or less at Archon level already, and it's obvious her power will continue to grow. And as we know, Morax already possessed near divine strength back in the era of the first civilizations, which strongly suggests that he's either connected to Celestia, like Zibai, meaning a high-ranking angel, or he's an otherworlder, but as we know, all angels have since become Seelies, with a few exceptions such as Nabu Malikata, Nicole, who clearly gave up her voice in exchange for a body, and Zibai, who simply got lucky by being dead at the moment the curse on angels was applied. You could assume that Morax also dodged the curse, but for now, that feels extremely forced, whereas the theory that he's an otherworlder is supported at least by the fact that he gave the Yaksha Shao a name he learned from another world, that according to the stone tablet records, he descended into Teyvat, and his clear association with a falling meteor, which perfectly mirrors how Skirk arrived in Teyvat in the form of a star or a meteor. The wording doesn't really matter here. So for now, we have 3 points supporting this theory. Of course, you could ask, if he's an otherworlder, then why does he suffer from erosion? In his own story quest, Morax directly states that Phanes himself inflicted that erosion on him, meaning it's not simple scripted aging, but something imposed by the heavenly principles. And going back to what I mentioned earlier, when Zhongli tells us something like, "Aren't you afraid of staying in Teyvat for so long? The more you know, the heavier the burden you carry," it's very possible that he's projecting his own life experience onto those words. If we summarize Morax as a whole, one thing is clear. He's unlikely to be an angel, and while he might be connected to Phanes in some way, the developers could absolutely pull that off. For now, it seems far more likely that he's an otherworlder, especially considering examples like Immunlocker and Salvindanier, who also arrived in Teyvat before War of Funerary Flame, making him at least one confirmed otherworlder we've known about since ancient times. Of course, the most unhinged and outright worse than a crack theory take would be that Morax is actually the Voyager who took over some boy's body in Hyperborea. But that's just for shock value, and I'm not going to seriously push that kind of nonsense. And of course, I can't not mention Istaroth, who once again appears on screen, albeit as a shade, well, a shade of a shade, whatever anyway. Istaroth was assembling a team, or helpers, or maybe just a single assistant. That part doesn't really matter. What matters is that she was chilling on the moon, in the palace of the lunar goddesses, which is pretty obvious since Zibai was there, descending to Teyvat from the moon, and then returning back where Istaroth was. So the lunar maidens are like, "Who are you and what are you doing in my house?" I always joke that Phanes in the Shades are basically squatters who showed up in someone else's home while the owner was away, but the fact that Istaroth and Zibai are living in the lunar palace makes that joke twice as funny. Hopefully, the moon goddess had guest rooms, but why Zibai specifically? Why did Istaroth choose her for the role of an angel boss? Or rather, not even why, but for what? What set her apart from the other angels? I think it was her stronger spirit or something like that. Basically, if you look at the whole picture from the outside, Istaroth promoted Zibai and moved her to the moon so that she would personally watch over Lan Gan and teach the local people how to live. But why the hell send her to the moon when there's already a moon goddess there? The logical assumption is that Zibai was supposed to observe how the moon goddess treats people, and Teyvat as a whole, although that example is probably not the best, because the moon goddesses were absolute idiots to the point of being infuriating. Like, how can you serve Phanes when your master flew off somewhere for a while? Come on. When creating Nibelung, they should have at least added a pinch of loyalty to the goddesses. I'm sure that if after Phanes some reptilians arrived, took over Teyvat and turned humans into slaves to mine Phlogiston, the moon goddesses would be like, well, everything seems fine, nothing wrong here, okay, I don't have the nerves for them. But on the other hand, we know about the goddesses' loyalty to Teyvat itself, and we also know that at some point they began to doubt Phanes, which could have influenced Zibai and the moment when the spikes were cast, when Zibai said, "Screw Phanes laws, I want to protect my people at any cost." And then Istaroth was like, "Aha, okay friend, go ahead, but you're definitely going to die." So the Lady of Time is basically sitting on two chairs, because later she saved Zibai in order to bring her back to Teyvat using the Fourth Descender and make her hate Phanes, which is exactly what happened. Whether this is overthinking or Astaroth's actual plan is unknown, but the fact that Phanes didn't give a damn about the total extermination of the human race for the sake of saving Teyvat from the abyss has a double meaning. The first meaning is that if Phanes is an AI from the twins' ship, then exterminating humans to cleanse Teyvat from the abyss is illogical and at the same time logical, because the planet is needed for the twins and that's the main factor, and humans dying is whatever. But on the other hand, such indifference toward humans could indicate that Phanes has the resources to create new ones, because if not, then there's no point in having a clean but lifeless planet, which makes this motivation smell more like Phanes being not an AI at all, but just some dude from space. And in any case, there are some very heavy hints that Istaroth is sabotaging Phanes, just not openly like Asmodee, but quietly. And then there's the event I always mention, where Istaroth made it so that the Abyss Twin escaped Teyvat after us, right before the Shades burst in and wiped out all of Conria, so that the twins possibly wouldn't meet Phanes, but would instead meet Asmodee, who would then save both of them from encountering the Primordial One, while the twin would be written into Irminsul so that Phanes would know the Abyss Twin poses no threat, while we weren't written in and were left as a Descender and awakened when Phanes fell asleep. And at that point, it's basically a 100 out of 100 hit that Astaroth and Asmodee, if not on our side, are at least firmly against Phanes, and we are the main instrument for overthrowing the Winged One. And it's also worth wondering what plans Alice has for us. Because if they're similar to the other two shades, then I'm sure that Reindetyr, aka Naberius, is also against Phanes, which would already make 3 shades opposing him. Poor Renova, apparently she's been prepared a mortal patch from Piero's hands. It's not for nothing that they show so clearly that the meeting of those two will end with someone's death. For now, these are all my thoughts. Overall, I really liked the Lantern Rite story. The Nodcry patch keeps delivering an abundance of lore. I personally can't wait until they finally tell us more about Morax and what's going on with our twins' project to resurrect Khaenri'ah. In general, before Snezhnaya, we should get a twist so massive that everyone will be in shock. And in Snezhnaya, at the very least, the shades should finally be revealed. So yeah, we wait. And with you, as always, was Lily. Don't forget to subscribe, smash the like buttons, and see you soon.